extend to his drug dealing or ripping off his friends. George got picked up by the police for a stack of unpaid parking fines and was sentenced to 2 weeks in the local jail. Keeping on with his quest for the truth, and to quell some of the boredom, he took along his mother's big Greek Orthodox family Bible. I can't imagine what the police thought when he walked in with it. It probably weighed 10 pounds. You know what happens next. George begins reading that big Bible, and the Holy Spirit falls on him. He is born again right there in the local lockup. When the police released George 10 days later, he was bursting at the seams, ready to tell the world about his newfound faith. His brother John picked him up from the jail and gave his life to Christ before they even arrived home. The two then banded together, Bibles under one arm and a copy of Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth under the other. It was the 1980s after all, and went out in hot pursuit of new converts. They compiled a list of all the people they sold drugs to, and called it their evangelistic hit list. They would pray for each person and then catch up with them to tell them about Jesus. I was on this hit list, as were a number of my friends, including my sister Sharon and dearest friend Mark, the two to whom this book is dedicated. My journey of faith didn't actually begin when George shared the gospel with me. God had been working on my case for a long time. I just hadn't realized it. Like George, I was a seeker, and in the weeks before coming to Jesus, I had sensed something was in the wind. I kept telling my friend Jason that my answer was just around the corner. He thought I was taking too many drugs, and maybe I was. But I was expectant, never thinking for a moment that my answer, like George's, would also be Jesus. When Jesus came into my life, everything changed. All those old clichés you hear, being lost and then found, being blind and then seeing, applied to me. I encountered God in such a dramatic way that I knew my life would never be the same. Within a very short time, both Sharon and Mark also gave their lives to Jesus. The three of us were living with a bunch of others in a big community house, and were living and identifying as gay. God set up residence among a group of people who had little clue about him or what the journey of faith entails. Within a period of about 6 months, over 50 people, friends and contacts, had come to know Jesus. But not everyone who lived with us was thrilled about our newfound faith. There was much debate, and sometimes outright hostility. At times, it felt like the two kingdoms were warring against one another, and they were. But God's Spirit was at work, and a new community of Jesus followers was being formed. Originally intended to indulge our hedonistic lifestyles, our home became a place for all sorts of people seeking refuge, healing, and personal transformation. A fateful prayer meeting. But we didn't have a church. George had found God in prison. We had no real connection with other believers in the outside world. As I look back now, I laugh, thinking how easily we could have ended up as some weird cult. But intuitively we knew we needed to go to church and meet other Christians. One night, Sharon and Mark stumbled on a cute old church building with the name Christian Chapel above the doors. Seeing a light shining from a side room, they knocked tentatively on the door. An older, willowy-looking man appeared. He was dressed in a white shirt and tie and introduced himself as Pat, the pastor of the church. Pat explained that they were in the middle of a prayer meeting and invited Sharon and Mark to join. They nervously declined, but said they would be back Sunday morning with their friends. A few days later, about 12 of us trundled along to the church. As we made our way down the centre aisle to the front of that little Christian chapel, I'm not sure who was more shocked, the church members or us. Talk about a clash of cultures. The men were wearing suits, and the ladies had on hats and gloves. We were dressed like we had just rolled out of bed after a hard night of partying. I still had on my pyjama top.